Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, the federal government approves new plan for the nation's dwindling economy, raises task force to reduce food prices nationwide. Lagos State government toughens its law on kidnapping as Governor Akinwumi Ambode approves life imprisonment for culprits. Some IDPs living in Yobe refuse to return to their ancestral homes over fears of renewed attacks by Boko Haram. And the African Union calls for massive withdrawal of membership of the International Criminal Court.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's central bank sells over $600 million in first forward transactions for 2017. On sports news tonight, Polish trainer Henryk Kasperzak resigns as Tunisia's coach following the Carthage Eagles' elimination from the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations. And from Abuja, I'm Gloria Umezioke. Tonight, trial of Justice Adeniyi Ademola continued today with bankers confirming the transfer of 30 million naira to his wife's account.
We begin tonight with what could be hope in the horizon for Nigeria's economic recession as the federal government today set up what it calls a task force to address the challenges facing the nation's troubled economy. Specifically, the task force has been given the mandate to reduce food prices in the country. The decision was taken at today's Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja. The government also approved a new tax policy to address low-level taxation in the country. Our State House correspondent Chukwuma Onekwusi reports.
The federal government has set up a committee to find out why prices of food items are on the rise in spite of bumper harvest. This approval will go down well with the common man who has been bearing the brunt over the increase in prices of food items in the country.
The government has set up a task force on food security that will ensure that an end is put to the wastages that occur where we have tons and tons of produce rotting, just sitting down, either in the farms or in the markets. The committee hopefully will be able to report back to council next week with concrete actions to be taken.
If you've been evading taxes in this country, or you are among those who have been paying little or nothing on imported luxury items in the country, the federal government is keeping an eye on you. Vice President Yemi Oshibajo and the ministers have come up with a tax policy to ensure that every kobo is collected from business transactions in the country to enable the government to function well.
Non-payment of tax is one of the big factors in our economic condition. It's part of the reason why many states aren't able to pay salaries, because people are simply not paying the right taxes or able to evade taxes. So what we intend to do now is interface with the National Assembly for those amendments, those specific amendments that the committee have brought up that need to be made. So those will be through an interface with the National Assembly to get those amendments to the laws passed. We should actually look at increasing VAT on some luxury items. VAT at 5%. We have the lowest VAT rate in the world. And whilst we don't think VAT should be increased on basic items, if you want to drink champagne, you drink champagne in the UK, VAT is 20%. Why should it be 5% in Nigeria? So they've made recommendations that we should pull out some luxury items and increase VAT on those luxury items immediately.
Council also is to acquire 2 first-class coaches and another 6 regular coaches to boost rail transportation on the Abuja-Kaduna standard gauge railway line following the impending closure of the Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport.
2 are first class, and then 2 are for baggage, and then of course the 6th number for long distance economy class coaches. This is to improve upon the transportation of passengers and goods on this Kaduna Abuja rail project.
The Federal Executive Council also approved joint briefing offices at the various airports across the country and 3 aerodromes in Bonny, Excravos and Eket. Chukwuma Onekwusi, Channels Television News.
A new set of data released today by the Statistics Office shows the total foreign exchange inflows into Nigeria fell by a massive 46.86% in 2016. That's the lowest value since the series started in 2007. The report also reveals that the received capital is far lower than 9.64 billion naira, $64 billion inflows in 2015. In this report, the implication of these challenges are examined.
The latest report by the Statistics Office showing Nigeria's total capital inflows, a decline of nearly $5 billion last year, was a confirmation of how turbulent 2016 was for Africa's largest economy. Total portfolio investments took a major hit, down nearly 70% on a year-on-year basis, as Naira value falls nearly 40% at the interbank OTC market, making Nigeria's financial assets more cheaper for foreign investors buying in US dollar terms. Overseas direct investments into the domestic economy also dipped last year, but at a smaller rate, a 27.83% difference on an annualized basis, with inflows into oil and gas, telecommunications, banking and services sectors at the top of the table. Despite the downside, however, Nigeria recorded a 3.48% growth in other investment inflows, such as trade credit, loans.
I do apologize, seem to have had some problem with that report, but joining us now to take a further look into the fall in foreign exchange inflow into Nigeria, I'm being joined on the news at 10 by an economist and a lecturer at the Lagos Business School, Dr. Bongo Adi. Dr. Adi, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
So looking at the statistics from the National Bureau of Statistics, which says that this is the lowest we have seen for foreign exchange fall to since 2007. Does it worry you?
Yeah, whilst I'm worried about the drop, very significant, the lowest since 2007. But I'm not really surprised because if you look at what has been happening in the recession, although the report does not blame the recession for the drop in the capital importation figures, but I don't know why that would be the argument, because if we consider the correlates of recession, which includes inflation, high interest rate, and high level of unemployment, and also capital underutilization. So I think all those go to actually increase the riskiness of, and again, the stock market has shed almost 40% of its value in the past 1.5 years. So when you put all this together, then it's giving off very negative signal to foreign investors.
So how can we then strengthen the Naira to reverse the situation and increase confidence in foreign investors so that they can make that investment that we badly need?
Yeah, I think the government's policymakers have a very thin margin. I actually don't envy their situation currently, but I think the foreign exchange policy needs to be revised. Right now, we do not actually know the number of rates operating in the market. It's so fragmented. So you have different rates for different activities and for different people. So there is need for the harmonization of that rate, and I think that also adds to the problem, the constraints that people are experiencing in the foreign exchange market currently. So economists have argued that government should actually allow the Naira to find its natural value. When we calculated the PPP, level, it shows that the parity would be around $200 to $300, no more. But of course, if the Naira is just allowed to float, allowed to find its natural rate, well, it will somehow hover up for a time, but then eventually to find its natural rate.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying the CBN is not guiding us right now. I mean, the way we're going.
Yes, when you have a fragmented foreign exchange market, that is what it indicates.
Let's look at, well, you already started talking about the policy of the CBN, given the downward trend. Could you perhaps give some suggestions, to help policymakers to help bring us out of this and help the naira strengthen against the dollar even much faster than we expect?
The most important thing that should be done is to restore confidence in policy-making process and in policy pronouncements. I think that is the first thing, because when you have fragmented exchange rates, which everybody attributes to policies of the government, then that does not boost investor confidence. So the first thing to do is to harmonize the exchange rates, okay, and then have a consistent policy stance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bongo Adi, for joining us tonight on the News at 10.
Thank you.
Now, it may no longer be business as usual for kidnappers in Lagos State, as Governor Akinwumi Ambode has signed into law the Anti-Kidnapping Bill. The prohibition of the act of kidnapping law imposes a penalty of life imprisonment for kidnappers, and where a victim dies in the course of kidnap, the suspect is liable on conviction of death. According to Governor Ambode, the spate of kidnapping in the state has gotten to a level that requires decisive action.
Kidnapping has almost become a daily crime carried out with ease depending on where it's being committed. The crime is reported in almost all the states of the country. Victims spend millions of naira to regain freedom from their kidnappers. Some even die in the process. But while kidnappers seem bent on their crime, the police have shown success in apprehending suspects. Recently, 5 students and 3 staff who were abducted at the Nigeria Tulip International School in Ogun State were released after tremendous pressure from the police. The introduction of a stiffer punishment for kidnapping in Lagos State is coming at a time of growing apprehension over such acts. Today, death penalty is being executed in several states, with Lagos being the most recent. And as part of efforts to address issues bordering on security in the state, Governor Akinwumi Ambode signed into law the Anti-Kidnapping Bill recently passed by the State House of Assembly. The law stipulates life imprisonment for kidnappers and the death penalty in some cases.
This law imposes the penalty of life imprisonment for kidnapping for ransom. The law stipulates that where a victim dies in the course of a kidnap, the suspect is liable on conviction to death. Security is of utmost importance to our administration, and we're confident that this law will serve as a deterrent to anybody who may desire to engage in this wicked act.
Even though this may come as good news, some security analysts suggest that adequate attention should also be given to funding of security agencies and the provision of appropriate equipment to deal with kidnapping.
In part 2, after the break, nurses take to the streets across Nigeria to demand adequate attention to their welfare. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.